Past the hills and rivers wide, where wildflowers freely bloom. In this land with skies so open, where can our children play? In cities bustling bright and loud, cars and lights that never sleep, do they find a piece of sky? Where can our children play? Bring them fields of green and gold, let their laughter echo clear. In a world so tightly wound, where can our children play? Mountains whisper ancient tales, forests sing in harmony. Will these wonders slip away? Where can our children play? Beyond the screens and towers tall, where dreams once were born and bred, do they carve new paths of joy? Where can our children play? Let's be stewards of this earth, guard the spaces wide and free. Do they find a piece of sky? Where can our children play? Bring them fields of green and gold, let their laughter echo clear. In a world so tightly wound, where can our children play? Bring them fields of green and gold, let their laughter echo clear. In a world so tightly wound, where can our children play?
Hello, Lori.
Hello, Patty. Good afternoon to our audience as well. I'm super excited to be doing, these podcasts with you. Especially, we're going to actually do some phases on this. So, the first phase that we kind of went back and forth, and I'm going to actually let you explain the seesaw effect before we get started. But we didn't know if we should go into the neurotransmitter dopamine, or if we should start off with serotonin. And we know
Right.
that they're in a seesaw effect. But let's
Right.
talk about that seesaw effect, really brief.
Okay.
So why
Okay.
don't you
Well,
explain?
okay. So first of all, we are going to talk about neurotransmitters, just so our audience knows. That's where we're going to. In fact, Lori and I were just talking, and I'm like, we should be recording our conversation, because basically we all are striving for a balanced brain. We're striving for a balanced life, right? And
Right.
in order to do that, we really have to have a balanced brain, and we have to have a fed brain, and a brain that's not always spinning, right? And so the seesaw that Lori's referring to, and we talked about already, is when we start trying to raise our dopamine, and we can do that with people do that with many things, right? Energy drinks. I mean, let's talk about the ways that we're not supporting very much, but the ways that aren't really helpful to our brain: energy drinks, stimulants, caffeine. What else can we throw in there? Video games, lack of sleep,
Social media.
social media, not resting. Like just when you feel like you just have to keep going, right? So you're looking for something to keep going. Well, that eventually depletes. Like we can only produce so much dopamine, and then it starts going down. And what the other thing that happens, which I learned from oh gosh, Hacking the American Mind. Who is that again? Mm,
Mark,
Lustig.
who?
Dr. Lustig.
Okay.
So he has a book called Hacking the American Mind. And in there, I really learned about this seesaw effect with every time dopamine, you're driving dopamine up, you need more energy, you got to get more done. Serotonin starts seesawing down. Now, I'm a health coach and a chef. I don't know a lot of the biochemistry of that. You may know more of that, Lori, but I got the message. I got the message that okay, so here we are in this dopamine driven world. Got to get it done, keep going. You don't have enough energy. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do to get everything done?
I'm
Right?
guilty of that. That's my brain.
Yeah, and part of it is your nature, right? Some people just have a busy brain. It's been referred to as ADD, or now we're using neurodivergent, so we're all a little neurodivergent. But some people are naturally just busier and they're thinking and they're going and it's going and it's going. But eventually everything starts depleting, and particularly serotonin. So then we have to upregulate the serotonin and balance that out. And that comes from other ways of living. It comes with sleep. It comes with some aminos like L-tryptophan and 5-HTP, and again protein. So those two go back and forth with each other, and that's why when you're trying to rebuild your dopamine with amino acid therapy or nutrient therapy, you do the serotonin at a different time. You don't do them together. And again, I'm not sure of the biochemistry of that, but they kind of cancel each other out. So when we were trained with our amino acid therapy, we were trained to say, okay, take your dopamine supplements in the morning and then wait to take your serotonin supplements a little bit later so that they can balance each other out.
That's a good way to put it. Let's back up a quick
Okay.
second. So, for those of our listeners that don't even really know what neurotransmitters are, because let's face it, modern day medicine does really not talk about neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are just the chemicals in your brain.
Mhm.
And you've got plenty of like different types of neurotransmitters, but we're going to focus on four of them over the next coming weeks. The first one that we're talking about right now is dopamine.
Mhm.
And just so the audience, knows, it's not like you can take a dopamine supplement, a dopamine pill. What you have to do is you have to take the precursors to build this. But what is dopamine? Dopamine is one of the three, what we refer to as the catecholamines, neurotransmitter systems. So the chemicals in your brain. It is the end point of the reward cascade. So, what's the
Mhm.
reward cascade? Where I feel good. Think about it. You ate a piece of, let's say, a healthy cake, and that tastes good and it feels good. And there are times, even for myself, because I used to be a sugar addict, that I wanted more, 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 and I didn't know my stopping point. But the reward was what I was getting because it just tasted so good. But the reward is not just feelings of being satisfied with sugar, it's
Mhm.
feelings of satisfaction. And think about where the world is, more importantly, our younger generation is in life. The reward, the satisfaction, the motivation, like you talked
Mhm.
about,
Mhm.
the pleasure, the stress management, and the effect on cognition and memory.
Right.
And when the dopamine is not firing, whether it's depleted, you're deficient, I'm going to throw out really quick. Sometimes we can inherit bad genetics where our dopamine doesn't fire correctly. And that's for another podcast. I personally have tested my genetics, and
Mhm.
I have a very fast, what they call COMT. So my dopamine is depleted quick. So I've
Mhm.
done brain spec imaging. We're going to show some brain specs later on in our talk, but I know that my dopamine is low because it shows it in my prefrontal cortex, my executive brain. But
Mm.
that's what dopamine is all about. It's called really the reward deficiency syndrome that Patty was talking about.
Mm.
So let's get a little like deeper now that people really understand that neurotransmitters really are just chemicals in your brain
Mhm.
that have already have
Mhm.
been given to you from birth.
Right. Right. Yeah, thank you for that. So when we have enough dopamine, we have just so our audience, and this is actually part of some of the assessment work we do when we work with people who are looking for more help to have more energy. But we have energy, we have drive. I mean, it's really our neurotransmitter that helps us feel alive. I can do this. I've got enough energy. I've got the drive. I've got the motivation. You feel alert. You're able to focus. So when we don't have enough of that, we have the opposite of the symptoms, and that is lack of energy. I'm actually reading it from my chart. Lack of energy, lack of drive, lack of focus, concentration. ADD is in that group. And some people often feel bored, right? Bored and that apathetic depression. So there is a form of depression when you're low in dopamine, but it's kind of like, I don't care.
Right.
It's like you don't care one way or another about most things.
Right.
That's the apathetic. And then you're always looking for stimulants. You're looking for something to bring it up, to feel more alive, to have more focus, to come out of that like flatness. It's almost
Which
like,
is really what we're seeing in today's lifestyle
yeah,
with the younger generation, the 20s, the 30s, and 40s,
right.
always looking for that stimulant effect,
Mhm.
whether they're getting it from vaping, cigarettes,
Mm.
opiates, ketamine, whatever.
Hmm.
And, you know, I always
Well,
I always feel that unless a parent can find the right doctor, the right health coach, and you and I are both certified in amino acid nutrition therapy,
uh-huh.
but that's what a parent would have to focus on. Who is well known, and Patty, you are very well known. You speak at many conferences, you teach many clients, you have an
Mhm.
education, well beyond the amino acid therapy knowledge,
Mhm.
and from a different perspective than I do. So when
Mhm.
you were talking about some of that, that's a really good explanation of really what's happening.
Right. Right. And we're in that, and I think I mentioned this to you when we talked earlier today, that I just see exhaustion for so many people, even young people, that should have, energy. But as we're striving for more energy and we're doing all these behaviors and taking these substances for more energy, they're just band-aids, right?
Right,
We're not actually feeding the neurotransmitter back.
right. Like root
An
cause,
energy drink doesn't do it. Like what?
like root cause.
Yes. We're not getting to like, oh, I actually need to sit down and have a meal. And maybe I need to supplement with like some of these dopamine lifting amino acids, or work on my adrenals, because we know that when we keep going, the adrenals, the thyroid, so many other functions in our body start shutting down and not working well. And it affects our nervous system, right? I mean, many of us are in that sympathetic nervous system, which is like that go fight or flight. Well, I got to get it
Right.
done, got to get it done. We're not breathing through it. We're not going, oh, it's been about 4 hours. I need to go have some food, actually feed my brain, which is the underlying cause of a lot of this stuff is we're not feeding ourselves. And then we're eating foods that have dyes in it and that aren't actually real food.
Right. Patty, can
So,
you talk a little bit about like the rehabs? People who go into these rehabilitations, whether they're addicted to drugs or alcohol or anything like that.
mhm,
What are most rehabs not doing in light of like feeding the brain with all the stuff that is in there when people
mhm.
are going in for help?
Well, I won't name any names because that wouldn't be something I would do, but most of the rehabs in our country, and I just really know about our country. I don't know about other countries, and there are a few that are striving now, but most of the general rehabs are not feeding people what they need to recover their brain
What are
and
they feeding
honestly
them?
stay sober. Well, it's basic food, it's not organic food. They're not teaching them about the nutrition based elements that are necessary to stay sober, or to recover, you know. So they're feeding them, you know, dyes and sugar still in there. It's not a focus, which is
Carbohydrates.
surprising for 2025 that it's still like that in
Yeah,
so many places. But
right.
that costs money. But it's not just the money, Lori. It's the lack of education for the people running the rehabs. They're not eating well. They don't feel the effect of when you eat well and you get the protein in that you need and the fat and the veggies and maybe some supplementation, you start feeling better. Your brain starts coming back on. And you're like, wow, I really enjoy being sober because my brain is balanced, which is really what I think a lot of addiction is, just about an imbalanced brain that may never have been fed. I mean, if someone grows up on junk food, they're actually not feeding their neurotransmitters.
Right.
So they may never actually feel complete happiness. And I understand there's the other part, the other legs of the stool, like we like to call it, trauma, you know, poverty, other things like that that come into the picture. But if the brain isn't fed, you may never feel any of that. I feeling like I want to be here. I want to help take care of the planet. I want to get involved in some of these, you know, projects because people have apathy, you know. If they don't
Right.
have enough dopamine, they're like, I don't want to do that. No, I have no motivation to do that.
So
So
y-
you're
I
not
have a
living your true self. You're not
right,
living your true self, which is
right.
supposed to be joyous.
So I have a question on low blood sugar, but before we
Mm,
go there, you talked about ADD. So as
yes.
a Dr. Amen brain certified health coach, I don't think that most people out there, and probably most parents, aren't even aware that there are 7 different types of ADD. And on those 7 different types, food matters. Complex carbohydrates matter, protein matters, because ADD is not really everybody needs protein, because some brains work better on, 70% veggies, nuts, seeds, and 30% more on protein, where some need 70%
Yeah.
protein and less carbs. So, but there's 7 different types of ADD. There are 6 different types of anxiety and depression. And Patty, there are 5 different types of obesity. So
Wow.
why don't you talk a little bit about when you're not feeding your brain? Let's talk about low blood sugar and
Okay.
what happens with a relapse or making bad decisions.
Well, so when you have missed a meal, essentially, and I want to just share that you were talking about some people need a little more protein, some need complex carbs. This is that mono diet for one person, like one diet doesn't fit everybody. We all need fat. I just want to talk about this first, and then I'll get to
Yes,
low blood sugar.
please.
We all need fat, we need protein, and we need complex carbs. So complex carbs are vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, a little bit of fruits, right? And we need them in varying amounts, right? Basically, but we all need protein and we may need different types of protein. You know, like I don't do well on red meat. My protein is fish, you know, and then sometimes some turkey or tempeh. So that being said, we have to really look at how we eat and what works for us instead of this one like, oh, I'm just going to do carnivore and blah blah blah. That doesn't work for everybody. It may have help someone temporarily, but what happens when we don't eat, and what I'm getting at here, is some people just come in, their nature is to forget to eat. They're just not dialed into that. They have a nature, what in Ayurvedic medicine is called vata. Vatas are air. And they just kind of float through, they think a lot. It's part of their personalized person, right? People look at astrology and they look at the human design, and we all have these different elements to ourselves. Well, vatas, if you have more of that element, you may forget to eat.
Right.
You'd be like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten in like 7 hours.
I think that's
And
me.
I think it might be you. And so that's so with those types of people like yourself, I have them set timers. I'm like, you might want to have put a little timer on or a clock on or something to go, okay, it's 4 hours or 5 hours. I need to actually sit and eat. There are other people who don't forget to eat. I don't forget to eat. I'm so dialed in, like I'm starving. Before this talk, I had to make sure I ate, and that's why I was a little late. Um, but what happens with blood sugar for all of us, and some of us feel it more than others, when you don't eat, your brain is starving, adrenaline gets released, and then cortisol gets released, and then you're in fight or flight. It's a real deal. Low blood sugar can be a game changer for so many people. And then they can be angry, they could get depressed just because their brain is on empty, just like your car.
And do you think that the people, I mean, I know the answer to this, but do you think that people, when they're in that fight flight, do you think they reach for crap food? Snickers
Yeah.
bar, Three
Well, if they
Musketeers,
don't know,
Oats,
if they don't know to go and get some protein or have something, eat some leftovers,
or
if
your
they
brain
don't know,
ball recipe, which I love.
or a brain ball. I'm making brain balls for this guy right now every weekly. But if they don't know to go to that, and listen, Lori, I used to go to that, okay, because I didn't know. I wasn't taught nutrition as a young girl, but I had anxiety and I couldn't concentrate in school, and it was really hard on my psyche. It was so hard because I would go to sugar. Nobody was teaching me, oh, Patty, have a little protein and some veggies too. Sit down, eat this first, and then you can have a treat after if you want. Nobody was telling me that. So I
Right,
was going for the treat. And then I'd feel great for about 20 minutes. And then I'd be like, oh,
right.
dropping because I was not. Simple carbs do not feed your brain. They just feed our taste buds and they actually deplete us.
And I think I'm saddened that modern day medicine isn't talking about this
Mm.
because that whole gut brain
Oh,
connection, the HPA axis, it
mhm.
is real. Dr. Raymond says that, our gut is our second brain. And our the foods that we consume, because let's face it, our brain is hungry, but the foods that we eat feed our brain. So we're either, if we there, we're either going to feed our brains crap in, crap out, or we're going to feed our brains by the foods that we eat, which are healthy and nutrition, which support all of these chemicals known as neurotransmitters. That is
Yes,
what's feeding our brain.
absolutely. Absolutely. No hands down on it. And one of our dear colleagues, Christina, who is the founder and director of the Institute for, no, that's the school we went to.
Oh
I was
yeah,
going to say the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. Her latest book is called Eat. Simple, but it's not that simple if you don't know what to eat, right?
right,
Because we've been in this, and I knew this conversation would get to that because our foundation is food. We are walking food. We are feeding our cells, all our cells, our brain cells, our muscle cells. And for us to be healthy and well, we have to eat well.
right.
And it's not being taught. In certain schools, it is. I think some of them people are waking up because there's really science behind it too. Like it's
Right,
not just like a
right,
theory,
right, right.
it's
Agreed. And for the young men listening, I always like to tell them this. Listen, if you could afford to buy a Lamborghini, and you would have to work hard for it, but if you could afford that Lamborghini and you have worked so hard for that, would you pull into the gas station and feed your Lamborghini regular unleaded gas, or would you feed that Lamborghini special fuel?
mm,
Because we all know what's in the tank, kind of like our gut. If we're putting crap in, unleaded food
mhm,
into a Lamborghini, how good do you think that car is going to run? So it's
mm.
kind of like the same thing, and our brains are way more precious than a Lamborghini.
Oh, well, we are the Lamborghini. We are the precious, bodies that need to be fed really positive, good food, and organic food as much as possible.
Right.
and make it a priority. I think that's the thing. But here, we're going to go back to dopamine now because if everybody's so busy, I'm so busy, I'm just going to eat on the run. And I know sometimes that's better than not eating, if you have a few meat sticks in your car or a few, nuts or brain balls or whatever, half a sandwich, that's fine. But pull over and just sit and eat. Like making eating a priority in our lives I really believe this is going to change our world because we are a very unfed world. And because of that, we're seeing such atrocities everywhere because I know we're not talking about serotonin today. We'll do that next, but low serotonin can be directly connected to rage and violence.
And you know what? Let me,
I mean, when
since
you think
you,
about that,
I
that
know.
means
So
that,
since you mentioned serotonin, serotonin is again, it's a neurotransmitter. It's one of
yes,
the chemicals
yes,
that keep our brain moving. It's
right.
when you're low in serotonin, it's like the brake is on and you can't shift the gear.
Hmm.
My brain types, there are times that
Hmm.
I cannot gear shift. And I
Mm,
know when I can't gear shift, even before we had this podcast, just because I don't want my brain getting stuck on the same thing, I took an amino acid supplement from Dr. Amen Brain MD called serotonin mood support, which is 5-HTP, ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil, a whole bunch of like herbs. And I knew that
mm,
it would tamp down the blood flow. So I just want to mention that since we're talking about serotonin, and a lot of people don't even know about serotonin because their primary care doctor really isn't having that discussion,
right.
let alone that serotonin, 95% of it roughly is the school of thought, is made in the gut. And when the gut is broke because you're not eating
Yep.
the right foods, just like you said,
Yep.
then guess what? Your brain is broke.
Yep. Well, and that's where the supplementation also comes in as well as the food, because supplementation is just, and I don't really I'd prefer not to supplement, but it's allies. It's supportive for me. And I have to tell you that when I was got pneumonia a couple months back, as you remember, and I had to rebuild my gut again. And I had to do that with supplementation as well as food. Um, and it was really interesting. I'll just interject this because, of course, I was in a hospital here in Salt Lake City. I won't name the hospital, but I think they're all pretty similar. And I had to have my food brought in by people that knew how to cook real food because I couldn't order anything on the menu. And I'm like, so we know that, right? We know the big institutions are not serving really good brain food. But I want to come back to that supplement that you're talking about. So these are some of the allies, and we don't prescribe anything here. We're just talking about what we use to support ourselves. Uh,
And I'll interject that
yeah,
Patty and I are both certified. We went to the same school, one of the probably the number one schools to be a holistic health coach,
yes,
Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And we are both certified with Christine Veselak in the amino acid therapy for nutrition.
yes.
So we've got a really broad understanding. And
Hmm.
then, even for me, being certified with Dr. Amen and how really the brain works, and you being a holistic chef, knowing
Hmm.
how to feed the gut, feed your
Hmm.
brain.
Hmm.
For those of you that are out there, I mean, collectively, we probably have 40 years of experience
Hmm.
together.
Right, right. And we walk our talk. I mean, once I started learning about this and learning that I could actually live without anxiety and depression, I was all in. And we're hoping the same for some of you because food matters, our lifestyle matters. And there are ways to support raising your dopamine. Again, with protein foods, with vegetables, there are some amino acids that work and
Yeah,
some.
let's talk about amino acids as we start to wind down.
Okay.
Um, Amino acids really, when you're eating
Hmm.
protein foods break down into amino acids. They're
Hmm.
not big pharma drugs.
Hmm.
They come from nature. They
Mm-hmm.
come from herbs. They can for sure come from the foods. But let's talk about what you and I do as far as for like our own support. I mean, even as holistic health coaches, I mean, I tend to drive on uh, my gear shifter never really shuts off because I'm always thinking about the next client, or I'm always thinking about how could this help, or let me do some research, or I need to watch 25 webinars because I'm so behind. And I know you're the same way. So let's talk about some of the supplements that I know you and I always bounce things off of each other. And we do have another co-host. She's at work, Jessica Endicott. We love you, Jessica. She's a yoga and a mindful meditation coach, and we love her. And we're hoping to get her on one of our podcasts. But let's talk about some amino acids that you and I know work for us and others.
Okay, so we're going to stick with dopamine this podcast.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So the two main amino acids that we recommend as coaches and we're trained in is L-tyrosine and also L-phenylalanine. So L-tyrosine is strong and stimulating. We use it for a lot of people who are really flat, depending on where they score on their assessment on the dopamine
And when you
section.
when you say flat, what do you
No
mean flat?
energy, flat.
Okay. Okay. No
It's kind of
motivation.
no motivation, flat. You can be cons depressed. You can be, it's a little bit different than the serotonin depression, which is more negative. Nothing ever works right. Dopamine depression is you don't care. You have no motivation. You're just kind of given up. You don't want to do anything anymore. So that's really down there. And anyone that's been driven by stimulants and energy drinks and the media and you know gaming, what happens is you're using all your dopamine and then you're depleted. And what do again? You go back to those behaviors or substances to bring it up again. But remember, it's just a band-aid, okay? Just like medication is a band-aid. And sometimes it's helpful. But what we really want to do is feed the neurotransmitter with amino acids and food and turning off the gaming and taking a break because our brain just can't keep going.
Right.
So L-phenylalanine is the other. So tyrosine works. It's again a little more stimulating, and then there's L-phenylalanine, which is a milder approach to lifting dopamine for people who are maybe too revved up. And then you mentioned L-dopa, so I wanted you to talk about that a little bit as well.
So for me, I personally like to use L-Dopa, also for
Okay.
myself. Um, Basically because I think tyrosine is a little too stimulating for me,
Right.
but also somebody that maybe has Graves' disease,
Mm-hmm. Thyroid.
melanoma, and even when we're coaching, I mean, sometimes people aren't really, they don't want to open up like that, but sometimes they don't even know.
Yeah,
You know,
there's
maybe
definitely some precautions with
yes.
tyrosine and
Yeah.
L-phenylalanine.
So it
Absolutely.
is stimulating, but I will tell you on days that I really have to like concentrate, and I've got a pile on my desk. Um, for me, I'll open up a L-tyrosine capsule, put it in a little glass bowl, and I'll just take my finger and just, put a little bit on my tongue because I don't require that. But L-dopa, so when we're looking at the conversion of these chemicals known as neurotransmitters, L-phenylalanine is one of them. It is the precursor, and what it basically the precursor means is that L-phenylalanine will convert to L-tyrosine. And then L-tyrosine is converted into L-dopa, which L-dopa is converted into dopamine. So I always think of when I think of L-dopa, you look at the Parkinson's world, you look at people that possibly have tremors. Um, Part of that root cause of what is they're experiencing
Mhm.
is that they can be low in the dopamine and brain spect imaging. There, besides for Dr. Amen, there is, oh my gosh, I'll come back to the other, Dr. David Perlmutter, who is
Mhm.
really just an expert in the whole dopamine. He's a brain surgeon. Anyway, they all talk about these neurotransmitters, the dopamine. So when they do brain spect imaging, what they will see is that in Parkinson's, they are deficient in dopamine. And when on brain spect imaging, what's happening is this parietal lobe right here is where the brain neurons start dying.
Mm,
And they're dying more rapidly than what the BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factor, because your body does create new brain neurons, but it's not creating thousands or hundreds of thousands at a time. But the
mm,
brain spect imaging shows that in the Parkinson's patients, that this parietal lobe and sometimes the back of the what we know the cerebellum, that is motor coordination. So when you think about what is happening with these Parkinson's patients, and part of the work that Dr. Stephanie Senoff has done, Dr. Don Huber, is that they know that these dangerous herbicides like glyphosate from Roundup, 2,4-D, paraquat, and a whole bunch of other herbicides, that it's killing off the brain neurons. I love the work that Dr. Stephanie Senoff is doing. But what
did you read
happens,
a book, Lori?
she wrote a book, it's called Toxic. Oh gosh, I'll show it at the end of
Okay.
this.
Okay.
She's a legend. And Dr. Don Huber is probably one of the world leading scientist, who is really well known for talking about how Roundup glyphosate depletes the amino acid tyrosine in the soil, tyrosine and tryptophan. So think what we're saying. We're spraying all these deadly herbicides on these plants. We are hoping to get, when we're eating the veggies, that we're hoping to get the L-tryptophan and the tyrosine. But when the soil is dead, because these farmers are using all these dangerous herbicides and
Mhm.
pesticides, it is also depleting the nutrients in the soil. So a
Right.
carrot is not like a carrot it was like back in 1920.
Mhm.
But then you go back to these Parkinson's patients, and they're depleted in dopamine. And so they tend to have these tremors. They have a hard time with motor
Yeah.
coordination. And there's really only one medicine that Dr. Amen really talks about when for dopamine. And Dr. David Perlmutter also on his book Grain Brain. They talk about when you get a big pharma medicine. That big pharma medicine is a dopaminergic medicine, meaning that it's dopamine feeding.
Mm,
So, one of the things that if people do notice that maybe they have a little brain fog, or maybe they notice, like, oh, you know what? I do feel like I have motor coordination, my left right motor coordination, or even children, for that fact, um, they can really concentrate on dopamine protein foods. And there are plenty of really good quality amino acids that not only contain the tyrosine, but contain the L-Dopa. And the brand for parents on a low income, I like the brand Now, NOW. And the reason I like that is because they're really one of the only family owned
mhm,
supplement companies out
mhm.
there, and their products will say non-GMO. So
Yep.
having something like
Yep.
non-GMO, genetically modified organisms, means that it's a cleaner product than something that you don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
You don't
No,
know what
I agree.
poison is in there.
I agree. And
So,
that's a good company for definitely people who are on more of a budget.
right,
And I use Now quite a bit myself.
right,
I think that's great. And I also think we have to really look at, again, looking at organic food and the value of why we want to find food that isn't sprayed with all these sprays, right?
right.
So that's another reason why we could be depleted too. The pesticides, herbicides coming in.
And we could
So
bring
there is,
Kathleen into that conversation on one of our ongoing podcasts that we're
yes,
going to have, because she can
yes,
definitely talk about
for
the
sure.
soil on
Okay.
that. And, I just want to make kudos out there for EWG.org,
Mhm.
Environmental Working Group, because they just
Absolutely.
released the dirty dozen, which are the 12 dirtiest foods that you should really never, ever eat conventional. Always eat non GMO or organic if you can. And the clean 15, which basically, one of the things on the clean 15 is a banana. But on these clean 15, you don't necessarily have to think about organics, which gives these parents that are on a low income, they can't afford to buy the organics, just don't buy anything off the dirty dozen.
Right on.
Buy stuff that is on the clean 15, or even buying, like, let's just say blueberries and strawberries, because they're always on the dirty dozen. They're always filled with toxic poison, chemicals,
Mhm.
herbicides. If you can't afford to buy the fresh, buy organic frozen.
Right.
Why? Because they're not going to go bad. You don't have to hurry up and eat a container of
Correct.
blueberries in
Yep.
3 days because it doesn't have any of that preservative crap.
Exactly.
And so you can get a long
Mhm.
ways in places like Costco. Kudos to Costco. Yes, you do have to have a membership, but I mean, they provide these bigger bags of stuff like that at more cost effective prices. Just
Yep.
like Aldi's. I think there's an Aldi's down in Salt Lake City. I used to send my brother Aldi's gift certificates because they even have more non-GMO organic. So I just wanted
Yes.
to talk
Nope,
about that.
I think that's good. And I think as we wrap up here now, I think we can just remind everybody there is hope. You can restore your energy, focus, motivation for life by your lifestyle, by what you're eating, and what you're doing. It's not just, again, the food is important, but also if you're on the internet all the time, and I know a lot of people have to work, take little breaks, take reset breaks where you just go out and sit outside and earth, connecting with nature,
Go
do
into the
some,
bathroom and stretch.
yeah,
Get
just
out of your
take
chair,
breaks.
walk around if you
Yep.
can. I mean, most employers nowadays, I don't think expect their employees to be sitting for 8 hours a day.
No, definitely not. So,
Right, right.
okay.
So what's one last, you know what? Let's just say one last thing each as a wrap up. And then Patty, um, how do they find us? How do they find you? Our Facebook page where you will find our other two co-hosts,
Yep.
Kathleen Halal and Jessica Endicott. You can find us on the Wellness Crusaders, the Facebook. We're on YouTube. But how do they find you in particular, Patty?
Well, my name, which is Patty, Pati, Reese, Reiss.com. That's my website. Just my name. And I am also on Instagram. I haven't been on there in a while. Um, Social media takes time. So, I have Instagram and I have a Facebook page too. So they can find me that way. And I would say my last comment would just be um, make make caring for yourselves and your family a priority. And people will say, well, of course I care for my family. And I get that. We love our families, but loving your family is also feeding your family and making the time to eat together or apart. I mean, not everybody has someone to eat with, but it's the more we feed ourselves and our brain, the more we're going to be a happier, joyous planet. So I would just say, please make the time to take care of yourselves and eat.
I like that. And prayer and meditation. And
Absolutely.
for anybody wanting to get a hold of me, you can go to my website. It's stopsprayingglyphosate.com. Again, glyphosate is the
Mhm.
active ingredient in Roundup. It's Glyphosate. Um, you can get a hold of me that way, but we would be glad to really answer any comments, or if you want like a follow up, or even on our next podcast, which we're going to talk about serotonin,
Mhm.
which we get back to that whole seesaw effect. The children, our young teens, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, we care about you. And
Yeah,
just so that you know, there are people like Patty and myself who are willing to talk with you um, to
absolutely.
explain all of this. So don't feel lonely that you have nowhere to go. So follow
Definitely.
us on the wellnesscrusaders.com, catch us on our Facebook, and more to come with the next podcast on serotonin, which is what I love because my brain needs serotonin to operate.
Oh, me too.
Patty, thank you so much. I love you so much. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, Lori. Bye to
Ciao, ciao.
everybody.
Bring them fields of green and gold, let their laughter echo clear. In a world so tightly wound, where can our children play? Bring them fields of green and gold, let their laughter echo clear. In a world so tightly wound, where can our children